Hey, Beau, why does the media make us so obsessed with finding the one?
Hmm. I love this question. Thank you for asking it. I, I, the topic of relationships is so interesting and fundamental to all of us. There's research. One of the longest longitudinal studies has demonstrated that one of the strongest predictors of not just happiness in our life but longevity is the quality of relationships. And so to be in a beautiful relationship is to add beauty, fundamental beauty to your life, but it can also go exactly opposite, which is why it's such a near and dear topic to me and to you. So this question seems to have really two parts. One is the social media side, and one is the one. So I'm going to speak to both of them a bit separately. But social media, of course, the way people present themselves on social media, in some sense, it's an aspect of who they are. I mean, really, but we are many things. But so often, people will present the idealized version, the version that they would like to be true, the identity that they would like others to see of them. Whether that is a fundamental identity, whether that's their dominant identity, is another question. Uh, and because everything your brain does is necessarily relative, which we've talked about in my podcast or in other aspects in the blog on the website, labofmisfits.com, or like I said, my Expanding Perception podcast. Uh, Everything you do is relative. So your brain will actually uh, compare your own sort of perceptual state of yourself, your relationship against what it sees. It's basically just calculating a distribution, a statistical distribution. And so often, because people are presenting an idealized version, we see ourselves as being on the wrong side of that average, wrong side of normal. Uh, so the importance, of course, is to compare your relationship to previous relationships or compare your relationship to where it was in the past. And fundamental to the quality of any relationship, to a beautiful relationship, is that it doesn't just grow, it expands. A relationship that's in movement is a relationship that's thriving. A relationship that's stagnant is dying. And so think about um, comparing your relationship not necessarily to all the others, but to your relationship in the past and yourself in your past, how you feel in the context of this other person, and whether you feel beautiful in that context or more beautiful than you did before. So social media, and I've taken some notes here, so I'm gonna let's also look at hence the reading glasses here, because I don't want to forget all these things, and at 53, sometimes that happens. So social media, in my experience, has never added value to a relationship. Not only does it decrease privacy, it also decreases intimacy in my personal experience, and I think the experience of many. When people are so strongly tied to social media, which is something I very much am, and I struggle myself with, is it feels like they're in a menage a trois. It feels like they are in a threesome. There's you and the other person, and then there's this other world. So when you're actually in conversation with someone, in some sense, you're not just in conversation with them in that moment in time, or rather, they're not in conversation with just you. They're in conversations with 15, 20 other people, just at different temporal frequencies. So while the conversation with you might be second to second, in their mind, they're actually having a conversation with someone else who might be every 5 minutes, or every 30 minutes, or every day, or every week. So we have these multiple conversations happening simultaneously, which is why someone is not necessarily present with you when they're so drawn to the social media. And what I find quite ironic is so many people, sometimes the people who speak so strongly about being present and the meditation and mindfulness are sometimes some of the strongest people who are spend so much time on social media. Right? I find that deeply, deeply ironic because the social media is doing exactly the opposite of what they speak to, and hence why for me actions are always speak to truth and less so words. Um, so what I find with the social media is not only is it creating a context for comparing yourself and being on the wrong side of average of that comparison, but also it's destroying the intimacy and privacy within the context of a loving relationships. And as a result, in some sense, I've found both personally and what I see in the world, but also the neuroscience, that relationships are becoming a commodity. It's almost like the phrase that I have is take what I want, or rather, take what I can, give what I want. So that's the social side of it, so social media side of it. But what about the one bit? And relationships are so essential to your well-being that it's better to not be in a relationship than to be in a poor one. I'm speaking the obvious here, and so so don't compromise in that regard, right? Of course, we have to adapt ourselves to the needs and care of another person. That is what it is to be in a relationship, but not in the context of one that is corrosive, that is negative, because we aren't affected by other people. Your brain contagious and is contagious, gets contagious by another person, right? And for some reason, in some sense, although there's actually a good reason, negativity can be far more contagious than joy. And the reason is because our brain is wired, in some sense, for negativity. It's wired to be cautious because during evolution, dying was easy. So it's very easy to be contagious by the negativity of another person. And so the one that you might be looking for, be thinking to yourself, how do, uh, in the pursuit of a beautiful relationship, is this, do I feel beauty in this relationship? Do I feel beautiful? Does the other person? And more than that, I think relationships are a bit like, love in general is a bit like a whirlpool. Okay, it emerges from the interactions between people. Okay, it's a physical thing that exists, but it only exists in the context of interaction, just like a water molecule, just like a whirlpool. Whirlpool emerges from the interaction of water molecules, and to me, that's what a loving relationship is. But one question that people seem to so often not ask when they're thinking about the one is, what about themselves? Are they the one? Are they good enough to be the one? So often we think about the other person, whether is this other person the one? But what about you? Are you the one for this other person? Are you behaving in a way that is lovable, right? Are you behaving in a way that inspires romance, that inspires love, that inspires generosity? Or are you just looking for love and looking for generosity, looking to receive? One of the greatest quotes I have heard from a dear friend of mine, Dwayne Michaels, beautiful, brilliant photographer, is, I've never been so happy, and it's when I'm most loving, as opposed, I've never been so happy as when I'm most loved. We're so often looking to be loved, but not necessarily to be loving. We gauge about what we receive, not what we actually give. So when thinking about whether or not you're with the one, maybe turn it around and ask yourself, what are you doing? What are you empowering, not enabling? What are you empowering in the other person that makes you the one in their life? Okay? So I'll leave you with that thought. Turn it around a little bit and think about how you are in the context of another person and how you empower that person, and whether you might be the one, or maybe whether you might feel in a way where you can actually, through the context of a relationship, expand yourself to become the one. Thanks for listening.